Elon Musk saves life of black homeless woman after Milionário fires her without warning. The street lamps buzzed weakly, casting long shadows over the empty bench where Grace sat, her fingers trembling, clutching a crumpled paper, her final paycheck. Just hours ago, she'd been fired cold. No warning, no chance to explain. The coffee shop, her escape from the noise and the ache of the city was gone, and with it her fragile sense of hope. Grace's chest tightened. The bitter taste of betrayal rolled through her like ice water. She stared out into the cold, biting wind, the buzz of distant traffic mixing with the heavy silence around her. The faces of those who promised to be there, family, friends, flashed like broken pictures in her mind. "They let me down," she whispered, barely audible. The lump in her throat was heavy. The city didn't want her. Neither did the people she thought cared. Then, out of nowhere, he appeared. Mark Thompson. The name sent ripples through every news channel. Wealthy, brilliant, obsessed with ideas that changed the world overnight. Yet tonight, his usual confident stride faltered as he found himself on the same freezing street under the faint glow of sodium lights, staring at Grace's shivering figure. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, an ache, a loneliness that even money couldn't buy. "Are you okay?" Mark's voice was soft, hesitant, unlike the sharp businessman headlines often painted him to be. Grace looked up, startled. Her voice caught in her throat when she answered, "Just lost my job. Just lost everything." Mark pulled his coat tighter, not from the cold, but from a hollow inside him no one saw. His empire, his millions, had built walls around a solitude deeper than any street corner. As she spoke, the fragments of her story spilled out. Low pay, impossible hours, and then whispers behind her back. Dark rumors suggesting her firing wasn't just about a cramped work schedule or a boss having a bad day. It was planned, a puzzle piece suddenly missing from the huge game she never wanted to be part of. "What if there's more to this?" Mark asked, his voice barely a breath. When Grace glanced down her coat sleeve, she spotted something strange. A hidden logo stitched faintly beneath the collar, the emblem of Mark's own company. Her heart sank. "Why would your company be connected to this?" she gasped. Mark's mind raced. This wasn't coincidence. Someone was pulling strings, weaving lies, trying to keep Grace down and him distracted. The street around them seemed to close in, the distant hum of passing cars fading into eerie silence. Both were trapped by invisible enemies. Both haunted by secrets dark enough to shatter everything they'd believed. Grace's hands shook as she pulled her jacket tighter, staring hard into the dim city that suddenly felt more like a labyrinth than ever before. Could my past be connected to him? And who's really controlling our fates? Mark swallowed hard. The night had just begun. The real story was waiting in the dark. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without notice. Take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content that's coming. And since you're here, drop a powerful like that really helps me with the algorithm. Oh, and let me know in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. The night had just begun. The real story was waiting in the dark. But before Grace could share her fears, a loud, screeching sound sliced through the air. A siren, piercing and urgent. Mark turned instinctively, his heart racing. A police car skidded to a stop, just a few feet away. Lights flashing and illuminating their tense faces in sharp bursts of blue and red. "Is this about me?" Grace's voice cracked, panic creeping in. Her eyes widened as she darted her gaze between Mark and the police. The shadow of their authority felt heavy, like a storm cloud threatening to break. Mark took a step closer, ready to shield her. But then something even more unexpected happened. A figure jumped out of the vehicle, not in uniform, but clad in a dark hoodie, face shadowed. The person stumbled toward them, wild-eyed and frantic. "Mark, you need to get out of here!" the stranger shouted, chest heaving. "They're coming for you!" Mark froze. "What do you mean? Who's coming?" His voice dripped with confusion and a gnawing fear. Suddenly, the figure pointed back toward the busy street. "They've been watching, Mark!" All the rumors. It's connected to you. You can't trust anyone. A chill ran down Grace's spine. Why was this person warning Mark? And what secrets swirled just beyond the edge of the city? "Wait!" Grace interjected, her heart racing. "What do you mean they're watching?" The hooded figure's eyes were frantic, darting around them. "They think you know. The scandal. They'll ruin you. They've already sent people to spread lies." "Lies? What lies?" Mark's voice deepened, each word laced with dread. "What are you talking about?" Before the figure could explain, a loud crash echoed through the street. A shadow burst from the alley behind them, a dark silhouette hurtling toward them. And in that instant, the quiet night erupted. Screams filled the air as bystanders scattered. Grace stumbled back, her thoughts racing. Mark's eyes locked onto the figure. "Run!" he shouted, grabbing Grace's arm, pulling her closer as chaos unfolded. But all around them, the crowd began to gather again, murmuring like a storm brewing. Some pointed, eyes wide with comprehension, while others stepped back in disgust. The tension crackled. They were far from safe. "Just stay close," Mark urged, adrenaline propelling them forward. Night lights flickered ominously, casting long shadows of their fleeing forms. In a frenzied motion, the hooded stranger was knocked aside by a pair of burly figures emerging from the shadows. One was a man, solid and looming. The other, his face obscured, held something that glinted under the street lamps. "Mark!" yelled the man with ferocity. "You think this ends here? You've crossed the wrong lines." Fear twisted in Grace's stomach. Was this connected to her firing? Just as she began to grasp the magnitude of this danger, Mark turned abruptly, his eyes wide, breathless. "Grace, there's something I haven't told you." "What?" she barely whispered, struggling to keep her feet on the ground. But Mark was interrupted by a sudden flash from the hooded figure. He lunged with unexpected speed, shoving something into Mark's pocket. "You'll need this. Trust no one." Before they could react, chaos erupted again. "Get him!" someone ordered. The air filled with shouts, pained cries, and the desperate sound of running feet. Her heart thudded painfully as they raced away. But now Grace's mind spun in an endless loop of confusion. Who was the hooded person? What danger loomed over Mark? And what secrets was he hiding? "Mark, we need to go!" she cried, glancing back at the turmoil behind them. "Not yet," he said, his voice shaking but resolute. "Not until I figure this out." As they ran into the ever-darkening streets, one truth gnawed at Grace. She was entwined in a web far more complex than she could have ever imagined. And as the echoes of chaos reverberated behind them, Grace felt that everything she thought she knew was slipping away, revealing a darker truth just waiting to be uncovered. Mark's mind raced as he absorbed Grace's words. The connection sent a chilling wave through him. A coincidence? No, not in this warped game they found themselves in. The dim streets felt heavier still. Mark's voice broke the stillness. "We need to find out what's really going on." Just then, a sudden crash echoed nearby, a sound that sliced through the thick air. Both turned sharply. An alley cat darted across the street, a furious burst of black and white as an old dumpster clanged shut behind it. But it wasn't the cat that made Grace gasp. It was the figure approaching. The voice. The voice was like ice water on a warm summer day. It was Alan, her former manager. The man who'd wielded the power to end her job like a flick of a switch. Her heart raced, not just from fear, but from a surge of desperation. "Alan, what are you doing here?" she stammered, hand clenching her paper paycheck like a lifeline. He smirked. "What? You thought I'd let you walk away without a word? There's more to this than you think." Grace and Mark exchanged quick glances. They both sensed danger. "What do you mean?" Grace's voice was trembling now, laced with anger. Alan stepped closer, eyes glinting with an untrustworthy light. "Oh, honey, this isn't just about your job. It's about the bigger picture." His laugh was low, almost sinister. "You've been pawns in a game you know nothing about." Mark moved slightly in front of Grace, sensing the threat. "What do you know?" His voice was sharp, cutting through the fog of dread. Alan's smile faded, replaced by something darker. "You really want to know?" Suddenly, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced at it, eyebrows shooting up, panic washing over his smug expression. "Alan?" Grace urged, her heart hammering. "What's happening?" Before he could respond, a blaring horn erupted from a nearby car. A man's voice bellowed through the window. "Get in, now!" Mark turned to the sound, instinct urging him to protect Grace. "They're on to you?" he whispered, the situation intensifying by the moment. Alan's facade shattered, the bravado melted away as he hesitated, looking between the car and Grace. "It's too late for you, Grace. Just walk away while you can." He spat, then made a dash toward the car, adrenaline fueled. "No, wait!" Grace yelled, but it was too late. The car door swung open, the engine revved, and Alan jumped in, urgency and fear painted across his face. Just as they sped off, Mark's phone buzzed violently in his pocket. He pulled it out, eyes widening as he read the message. "We know what you've done. It's time to end this." His face drained of color. Everything spun. Had he been part of something much bigger than he realized? Was he being watched? Mark, what's wrong? Grace reached for him, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. But all he could do was stare into the distance where the car had vanished. The shadows felt like they were closing in, darkness creeping around the edges of their reality. So many pieces, but what does it mean? He murmured, breath quickening. Grace felt a shiver run through her, hands trembling. Mark, we need to figure this out. Are we in danger? The world felt too close, too suffocating. There were too many questions. We've been drawn into something wrong, he admitted, panic creeping into his tone. Suddenly, without warning, a figure emerged from another alley, silhouetted against the streetlight. Mark. It was someone they both recognized. Someone they never expected to see here. The night just thickened around them, the stakes rising higher than either had imagined. The twists were unwinding. The truth was lurking just beyond the shadows, and neither knew if they were ready for what came next. Mark's breath caught as he stared at the form stepping into the light. Alex? The name slipped out before he could stop it, surprise threading through his voice. He hadn't seen Alex, his closest friend and confidant from the tech world, in years. Shadows danced across Alex's worried face. Mark, we need to talk, Alex said urgently, his eyes darting to Grace, who looked just as confused. This isn't just about the company anymore. Grace's heart raced with unease. What do you mean? What do you know, Alex? But before he could reply, another loud crash echoed nearby, followed by a frantic scream. The disturbance made everyone freeze. Even Alan's voice seemed suspended in the shock of the moment. People were staring, whispering in tense clusters. Alex, what's going on? Is it about what happened at the coffee shop? Mark pressed, the thought of Grace being swept into something dangerous gnawing at him. Much worse, Alex replied, panting slightly. It connects to the board members. They're not who you think. They've... Alex hesitated, hesitating as if the next words could fall like a bombshell. They've been monitoring our every move. The layoffs, the rumors, they were all set in motion to take you down. Mark swallowed hard as his mind raced. Why? Why would they want me? Because you got too close to something they wanted hidden, Alex said, his voice dropping to a whisper. And now it's too late. They're coming for you. As he spoke, the tension thickened in the air. A desperate feeling crept over Grace. What does that mean for us? She asked, her voice trembling. What could they possibly want with me? But before anyone could answer, the air was shattered by the screeching of tires. A black SUV veered sharply, coming to a halt just inches from where they stood. Mark instinctively pushed Grace behind him, adrenaline shooting through him. Get in, now! A voice boomed from the SUV. It was a stern-looking woman, eyes sharp and inspecting. She pointed with urgency, her fear palpable, Alan's face twisted in anger. No, you're not taking them, he shouted, moving toward the SUV with unexpected boldness. But he was cut off by another figure stepping out of the vehicle. This time, a hulking man who grabbed Alan by the collar and hurled him aside like a rag doll. Let's go, the woman urged again, her tone intense. Mark stole a glance at Grace. Her eyes reflected pure terror, mixed with a strange glint of determination. Do we trust them? Mark questioned, every muscle in his body tensed. We don't have a choice, Grace exclaimed, grabbing his hand. They know something. Oh, this is bigger than us. Before he could respond, the crowd surged closer. whispers swelling into a cacophony of panic. In that moment, Alex's expression shifted, a look of absolute horror crossing his features. "No, it can't be," he murmured, backing away. "What is it?" Grace demanded, her chest tightening as she sensed something monumental shifting. Alex turned pale, pointing. "Mark, look!" He gestured behind Mark, who spun around, only to see a group of shadowy figures emerging from the alley. Their faces were obscured by hoods, but in the dim light, Mark felt a terrible recognition take root. "Why are they here?" Grace whispered, her body shaking. "Mark, who are they?" A figure stepped forward, and Mark felt his world tilt. It was his ex-business partner, Julian, the one who disappeared right before the rumors began. "It's time, Mark. We need to settle what's been started," Julian called out, his voice carrying an ominous weight. "What do you mean?" Mark cried, confusion warping into fear. But before Julian could answer, the hulking man from the SUV suddenly lunged, capturing Alex by the arms. "He knows too much. Get them all!" Panic exploded. Grace pulled Mark closer. But the world spun around them, chaos bursting forth as the crowd scattered, screams echoing in the air. "Mark, we have to go!" Grace screamed, but Mark felt rooted to the spot, shock clawing at him. Glaring at Julian, he saw everything he'd believed unraveling into dark secrets. What was hidden was about to be exposed, and there was no escape from the labyrinth he had wandered into. As two worlds collided around them, reality seemed to crumble. Questions swirled. What had he become a part of? And who could he trust when friends turned to foes and enemies lingered in the shadows? Grace's hand tightened in his. "Mark, now!" With that, they dashed toward the SUV, the unknown stirring within them, heartbeats racing as the next chapter loomed ominously ahead. The night had just begun. The real story was waiting in the dark. Mark felt the weight of the world pressing down around him. Grace's words echoed, haunting him. He was ready to dig deeper, to find the truth behind her firing. But before he could speak, a commotion erupted behind them. A group of rough-looking men turned the corner, shouting and stumbling, their voices like shards of glass. "Get out of our way!" One of them yelled, laughter spilling out with menace. An accident, a fight, something dark brewed just beyond the glow of the street lamps. Mark's instinct kicked in. "We need to move," he said, urgency lacing his tone. He grabbed Grace's arm, prepared to pull her to safety. But just as he turned, the world shifted. A bright light flared up, flooding the alley. An unmarked van screeched to a halt, doors flinging open. "Get in!" a voice barked, its tone harsh, demanding. The men hesitated, confusion darting across their faces. This wasn't just a random encounter anymore. Whoever had arrived was a threat. "Mark!" Grace cried, panic flooding her voice. She looked ready to bolt, but something about the sound made Mark freeze. It wasn't just fear he heard in her tone. It was recognition. The men lurched forward, but before they could reach her, Grace stumbled back into Mark's shadow. "It's him!" she stammered, eyes wide as she pointed. "That's him!" Mark turned, heart hammering. Through the chaos, he locked eyes with one of the men. An overwhelming sense of dread washed over him. This wasn't just a random thug. This was someone from her past, or worse, his own. "What do you mean, him?" Mark asked, breath caught in his throat. "Do you know him?" "Yes," she spat, voice trembling with fear. "He's the one who made my life hell." The man smirked, stepping closer, the harsh city light catching the glint in his eye. "You thought you could escape, didn't you?" His tone was dripping with malice. "No!" Grace gasped, shaking her head. "I didn't. I thought it was over." The men advanced, crowding in, blocking their escape. Mark's mind raced, and adrenaline surged through his veins. "Grace, stay behind me," he snapped, adrenaline pumping. But as the man closed in, something sparked in Grace's eyes. "No, you don't understand," she shouted, fury breaking through her fear. "I'm not going back to him." She stepped forward, challenging him. "What do you mean? You're not in charge here," the man growled. But there was a quiver in his voice. Something in Grace shifted. "Enough," she said. In an instant, a quick motion, her hand dove into her coat pocket and pulled out a small, shining object. A knife. Mark gasped. "Grace, no!" But it was as if Grace transformed before his eyes, fueled by a fire that had been buried deep within her. "You think you can control me? You think you own me?" she yelled, stance unwavering. The sidewalk pulsed with tension. Mark stood frozen, heart pounding. Who was this woman before him? Then, as the situation escalated, another voice broke through the charged air. "Let her go, Marcus!" The name hit Mark like a punch to the gut. "Marcus?" he repeated, voice barely above a whisper. It echoed back to him, twisting memories he never wanted to face. In that moment, shock twisted through him, unraveling everything he thought he knew. Grace wasn't just a victim. She was connected to a past he had buried, a web of lies and betrayal that wrapped tighter around them with each passing second. As the tension peaked and everything swirled into chaos, Mark could only think one thing. How deep did this rabbit hole go? A night had just begun. The real story was waiting in the dark. Grace felt the weight of Mark's gaze on her. It was a connection she hadn't expected, a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters. But before either of them could process it, a loud crash shattered the silence. Nearby, a car skidded to a halt, tires screeching, sending shadows dancing across their faces. Grace jerked her head around, heart racing. "What was that?" Mark's expression turned serious. He moved toward the sound, instinct kicking in. "Stay here!" But Grace didn't want to be left behind. She followed him, her curiosity mingling with a growing sense of dread. When they stumbled closer, they saw a man sitting on the ground. He clutched his leg in agony, face twisted in pain. The car was a wreck, a crumpled mess of metal and glass, the driver visibly shaken. People were gathering now, murmurs of shock echoing in the night. Grace felt a pull in her gut. "Someone call an ambulance!" Mark shouted over the crowd, his voice booming. But just as he stepped closer, the man on the ground looked up, and their eyes locked. Grace's breath caught in her throat. She recognized him, a former coworker, Danny, who had always seemed off. But now he looked completely defeated. "Grace, it's bad," Danny gasped, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. His eyes darted to Mark as if he were seeing a ghost. It's all connected. The firing, the rumors, the money." Mark winced, the words striking like a dagger. "What are you saying?" His voice trembled, confusion swirling in the air amidst the chaos. "I wasn't going to say anything, but—" Danny's words were broken, labored. "They pulled me in. I thought I was safe. They're watching. They know everything. The crowd shifted, whispers spreading like wildfire. Grace felt the chill creep deeper into her bones. What was he talking about? "Stop!" Mark commanded, leaning in closer to Danny. "What do you mean? Who's watching?" But Danny's eyes rolled back as he let out a strangled cry. Then, unexpectedly, his body convulsed, and he slumped back against the cold pavement. Silence fell, thick and heavy. The onlookers gasped, some stepping back in fear. "Is he dead?" someone whispered. Panic spread like smoke through the gathering crowd. "Call for help! Someone!" Mark's voice rang out again, but it felt strained. He looked at Grace, desperation threading through his features. What the hell just happened? Grace's mind raced as she tried to piece the fragments together. "This doesn't make sense," she murmured, shaking her head. And then, amid the tension, she felt it. A pulse in her pocket. The crumpled paper she had been holding. Grace pulled it out, eyes widening. There on the back, the faint imprint of a signature, a name she recognized. "Mark, look!" she began, but the look in his eyes warned her of something deeper. Something was wrong. Before she could finish her thought, the distant wail of sirens echoed in the background, growing louder. The crowd began to close in, their faces a mix of fear and intrigue. Mark grabbed her hand, squeezing tight as the world around them blurred in chaos. "We need to go!" now, but Grace hesitated, confusion and fear gripping her. What if he was telling the truth? What if we're in danger too? Just then, a figure stepped out from the shadows, cloaked in the darkness. The streetlights flickered, casting an eerie glow. Mark's eyes met Grace's, filled with a mix of resolve and dread. "Run!" he shouted, pulling her along. They darted into the night, hearts racing, but the city felt alive with secrets. Secrets they were now part of. As the sirens wailed closer and the figure stepped further into the light, Grace felt the ground beneath them shift. Everything had changed, but the truth remained just out of reach, waiting to unravel with each frantic heartbeat. The night had just begun. The real story was waiting in the dark, but a sudden crash shattered the silence, jolting both Grace and Mark. A car screeched to a halt nearby, tires emitting a frantic squeal that echoed off the walls of the narrow street. Shadows darted past as people scrambled, panic igniting the air. What was that? Grace's heart raced. A knot tightened in her stomach, and the world around her melted away, narrowing to the commotion just down the block. Before Mark could answer, a figure emerged from the shadows, cloaked in darkness. A man stumbled over a trash can, nearly falling as he righted himself, glaring into the night. His expression twisted between anger and desperation. And then she saw it. The glint of something metallic in his hand. A knife. "Hey, back off!" he shouted, his voice raw and frantic, cutting through the chaos. People froze, eyes wide, expressions shifting from shock to fear. Grace's breath caught in her throat, each heartbeat thudding louder in her ears. Mark moved instinctively, stepping in front of Grace, shielding her from the sight. "Stay behind me," he commanded, his usual bravado replaced by palpable tension. But as he positioned himself, another tremor ran through the scene. A flash of blue and red lights approached, growing larger as sirens wailed in urgency. Suddenly, the man turned, his eyes darting. He lunged toward a woman, panic etched across her face. "You don't understand! They're coming for me!" he screamed, pointing wildly. The night air crackled. "Get back!" a police officer shouted, emerging from the squad car with drawn weapons. The crowd gasped, and that's when everything unraveled. The man's wild eyes softened as he glanced toward Grace. "Grace!" he croaked, the name escaping his lips like a confession. "What?" She stepped back, confusion flooding her mind. How did he know her name? Her heart raced even faster now, and the world spun around her. Mark's grip on her arm tightened, and instinctively she glanced at him. The color drained from his face. "Do you know him?" Mark asked, eyes darting between Grace and the man. I don't, she stammered. But before she could finish, the man pulled his shirt aside, revealing a faded emblem, the same emblem tucked away beneath her collar. "You're in danger," he shouted. "They're using you to get to me." The police advanced, their voices barely audible over the roar of chaos. The crowd gasped, and tension hung thick. Shock ripped through Grace. A rush of memories collided in her mind. The whispers, the cold stares, a name she long buried. "Get down!" Mark yelled, diving to shield her. Silence enveloped them. A bubble formed only for the four of them in this nightmarish moment. The knife glinted again, and with it, Grace's chest tightened over a truth she never wanted to face. Boom. A man was connected to her past. Threads she thought severed now twisted dangerously close. The crowd held its breath, anticipation clashing with dread. "Tell her, Mark!" the man roared, desperation spilling from his eyes. "Tell her who she really is!" Questions screamed inside her head, her mind racing 1,000,000 miles a minute. "What do you mean?" Grace whispered, panic snaking its way into every thought. The night felt darker now, shadows creeping closer, secrets teetering on the edge of revelation. In that heartbeat, everything shifted. Her life, her dreams, her very identity was spinning. Nothing was as it seemed. Behind marks of wealth and desperation lay threads connecting all of them. A tangled web of truth, betrayal, and deception, far beyond what she could ever have imagined. The sirens wailed, and time hung suspended, poised on the precipice of a truth that would change everything. The sirens wailed, and time hung suspended, poised on the precipice of a truth that would change everything. Grace's breath hitched, uncertainty etching lines across her face. Mark, eyes wide with fear and confusion, stood rigid beside her, trying to process the chaos unfolding around them. Danny, the man on the ground, lay still, his eyes glazing over. A shadow of panic crossed Grace's heart. "Is he?" she stammered, her voice a whisper. The weight of the night pressed hard against her chest. In that moment, everything erupted. The crowd gasped collectively as a new figure emerged from the night. A tall woman, hair wild and dark, her eyes fierce and accusing. She pushed her way through, exuding an energy that seemed to draw everyone's attention like a magnet. "Stop!" she shouted, voice like thunder, cutting through the confusion of the moment. The man with the knife stumbled back, surprise washing over his face, as if she were a specter he never expected to see. "You!" he hissed, eyes narrowing. Claire, Grace's old friend, staggered forward, shaking with anger and urgency. You think you can just walk away from this? After everything? Claire! Grace gasped, shock and confusion lacing her voice. How had she gotten here? What did she mean by everything? Grace, don't listen to him! He's lying! Claire shouted back, her gaze intense, driving through the tension like a sharpened blade. It's all a setup. You've been pulled into something dark, something we all wished would stay buried. The knife man sneered, the tension shifting from fearful to aggressive. You think you know the truth? You're just as guilty. Mark's hold on Grace tightened. What does that mean? His voice sliced through the air. But before they could grab hold of that unraveling thread, Claire lunged forward, her hand reaching deep into her pocket, only to pull out a flash drive. This holds everything. A loud crash erupted nearby, the world spinning in chaos as the crowd went wild. People surged forward, the air filled with confusion and fear. Danny groaned, suddenly stirring back to life, eyes filled with panic. Get it to him! Don't let them take you! He needs to know! His voice broke into a frantic shout. Mark's heart raced, but the frantic energy radiating from Claire made him hesitate. What's on it? What are you talking about? The urgency was palpable, thrumming in the air, but before Claire could answer, a gunshot pierced the night. Time stopped. An explosion of chaos surrounded them. People screamed. Some hit the ground. Mark felt the world shift, the shocking reality tearing through their lives. As he spun around to protect Grace, he found her eyes wide, horror-stricken. No, he shouted, reaching for her just as she disappeared into the mass of terrified bodies. And then, to his utter disbelief, Claire fell to the ground. The flash drive slipped from her fingers, clattering to the pavement. The object of all their hopes, now in the chilling grip of uncertainty. Claire! Grace screamed, elbowing through the throng toward her friend. Panic surged as time resumed. The night had unraveled, and now a new danger loomed large. The crowd parted as police yelled for people to clear the area. Chaos emerging with crackling energy. Mark, we can't leave her, Grace exclaimed. But Mark couldn't think. He felt time slipping, lives fracturing around him. We have to go. They'll come for us next. Heart racing, Mark reached for Grace as she turned back toward Claire. We can't! But she was already darting forward, the flickering streetlights casting jagged shadows. And then, a chilling laugh echoed through the melee. The man with the knife, Marcus, stood upright, triumphant, eyes gleaming in the dim lights. You think you're in charge? This isn't over. This is just the beginning. The urgency in that moment twisted, a shockwave spreading as the magnitude of the unfolding chaos dawned on them. Something far darker connected all of them. A web too intricate to see, too dangerous to unravel. Relationships were shattering, secrets tugging at the very fabric of their lives. Grace! Mark shouted, voice strained. Get back! As the chaos of the night intermingled with the echo of truth, Grace felt the ground beneath her shift. Trust, betrayal, and fear twisted together in a way she never had anticipated. And just like that, an invisible thread tied their fates tighter, pulling them into a darkness that beckoned with chilling allure. What had they awakened? What was waiting just beyond the brink? The real nightmare had only just begun. The night had just begun. The real story was waiting in the dark, but everything felt like it was twisting out of control. Grace's heart pounded as she glanced between Danny and the chaotic crowd, her mind racing. "Get it to him! Don't let them take you!" he had shouted before he'd fallen back. His words echoed in her mind, a haunting warning that clung to her like fog. Suddenly, Claire's voice shattered the uncertainty. "Stop! You don't understand!" Her eyes locked onto Danny, panic transforming her face. "He's not who you think he is!" Mark shifted uneasily, eyes darting from Claire to Danny. "What did you say?" The tension shifted again. The knife man had retreated slightly, unsure. Danny groaned, slowly rising as if the weight of the world pressed him down. But then a shadow flickered across Grace's vision, a blur moving faster than she could comprehend. "Danny!" Claire screamed. Before anyone could react, the knife man lunged for Danny, shoving him hard against the pavement. "You've ruined everything!" he yelled, anger boiling over, face twisted with fury. Grace felt a surge of adrenaline rippling through her. "No!" she screamed, but the moment stopped as Danny leaned in, whispering something urgent. "Listen, there's a reason." His voice broke. "It's all connected!" And then his gaze steered toward Mark, eyes wide with understanding. "Mark, you need to know." But before Danny could finish, a blaring horn cut through the air. A car, swerving wildly, skidded to a stop right next to them. The driver, a rough-looking man in a leather jacket, yelled, "Get in!" Everyone hesitated, confusion swirling in the air. "Mark, we can't trust him!" Grace blinked, fear coiling tight in her stomach. But then the man stepped out, hands raised in urgency. "No time! They're coming!" He locked eyes with Mark, wild intensity glowing in his gaze. "I know him. He's not who he claims to be." Mark shifted uncomfortably, mouth opening in surprise. "What do you mean?" And that's when it happened, in a heartbeat. The air crackled and the atmosphere shifted, like a storm brewing in the distance. Suddenly, the sky illuminated with a sharp flash. A bright orange glow erupted from behind the corner of the building, followed by a deafening explosion. The ground shook as screams erupted, bodies flying in all directions. Grace's world spun. She felt Mark's grip tightening, pulling her close, but fear clawed at her insides. "Is everyone all right?" Mark yelled, but his voice was lost in the chaos. The crowd was in pandemonium, people scrambling for cover as smoke billowed into the air. In that haze, Claire rushed toward them, face pale, but it was the expression on Danny's face that froze Grace in her tracks. The panic had vanished. It was replaced with an eerie calm. "You have to choose, Grace," he said, eyes locking onto hers, "or everything will end in flames." "What are you talking about?" she choked, confusion seizing her. "Mark isn't just some businessman. He's involved in something dangerous. They're using you both. You're the key to it all," he shouted, voice slicing through the chaos. The weight of his words landed hard, twisting in her gut. "What? Why didn't you say this before?" But Danny didn't answer. His expression turned distant, and the smoke curled around him, making him seem like a ghost trapped in the thickening air. "Remember this moment, Grace," he said, the urgency hanging like a noose. "Danny!" she yelled. desperation rising, but he faded back into the mix of flying debris, leaving her gasping, confusion colliding in her mind. Suddenly, a scream pierced the night as a figure burst from the smoke. The man in leather, eyes wild, staggered toward them, shouting, "They're coming for all of us! We have to move!" Mark turned to Grace, confusion setting into determination. "We don't have time for explanations. We need to go, now!" Just then, a shadow emerged, tall and foreboding. The knife man was back, eyes burning with fury. "You can't escape the truth!" The ground beneath them felt unstable, a tapestry of chaos weaving tighter and closer. Grace felt Mark's hand slipping from hers as panic gripped her heart. "Mark, no!" she screamed, but before she could reach for him, everything erupted into chaos once more. The night was no longer just a backdrop. It was alive, breathing secrets, holding dangers waiting to pounce. And in the split blur of that moment, with the flames rising behind them, an undeniable truth settled into the air. A truth that would break everything they held dear and shatter the bonds between them. Everything they thought they knew was about to change forever. Mark's heart raced as he pulled Grace closer. The night was a storm of chaos, confusion swirling in every direction. He could feel the heat of the flames rising behind them, smell the acrid scent of smoke mingling with fear. Time seemed to stand still as the knife man advanced, eyes wild, unyielding in his pursuit. "You think you can just run?" he spat, rage boiling over. "No," Grace shouted, defiance shining in her eyes. "You don't control me!" In a flash, Claire pushed past the chaos, urgency etched on her face. "We need to get to safety! Now!" The moment hung on a fragile thread. Mark could feel the weight of uncertainty coiling around them, holding them at the edge of something they couldn't yet understand. But before they could retreat to safety, Danny let out a choked cry. "It's not just him! It's all of them!" His words fell like stones into the turbulent water around them. An unsettling truth danced at the edges of their consciousness, threatening to break through. The crowd was in full panic. Sirens echoed, voices screamed, eyes darted everywhere. Mark felt Grace slip through his fingers as the weight of it all pressed down on him. "Don't lose sight of me!" he yelled, pushing through the throng, searching desperately for a glimmer of calm amid the storm. Claire grabbed Danny's arm, pulling him back as the knife man shifted, poised to strike. "You don't want to do this," she shouted, voice steady. "You don't know what you're messing with!" Mark turned just in time to witness the knife man hesitate, uncertainty flickering across his face. The weight of the truth hung heavy. The fire burning behind them illuminated the shadows of their past, pushing against the barriers of survival they'd all erected. "Help me!" Danny cried, voice raw. "You're all caught in this. They want you, Grace. You're the key!" With those words, the air shifted again, tension coiling tighter. Grace stepped forward, courage kindling in her chest. "What do you mean?" she demanded, eyes fierce and unyielding. But before Danny could answer, the knife man lunged. Mark instinctively interposed himself, heart pounding, prepared for a fight. Everything slowed. Fear and adrenaline surged through him, blurring the lines between life and death. "No!" Grace cried again, pushing past them both, a fierce resolve lighting her face. In that moment, something powerful clicked inside her. "You're not going to take us down!" The chaos surged, filled with screams and desperation. But as the knife man stumbled, caught off guard by her courage, Danny sprang into action. "This way!" he shouted, pointing toward an alleyway. Mark's heart raced as he grabbed Grace's hand. "We have to trust him," he urged, urgency coloring his voice. Grace nodded, a fierce determination in her eyes. They sprinted toward the shadows, the world behind them escalating into chaos. Sirens blared louder, filling the air with urgency as they fled into the darkened alley. Mark glanced back, the panic of the crowd mixing with a scent of smoke hanging heavy in the night. In that instant, it seemed like everything had changed. The night unfolded before them, the streetlights flickering like ghosts. Danny led them deeper into the maze, fear etched on his face. "I'll explain everything, but we have to get out of here. They're hunting you too." As they moved, the sounds of the chaos faded into the distance, the air thick with adrenaline and fear. But now they had one mission: escape this labyrinth of danger and uncover the truth that loomed beneath the surface. Mark looked at Grace, her determination shining bright despite the fear swirling in her heart. "Whatever happens, we stick together, no matter what." The night deepened, shadows swirling as they pushed forward, uncertain of what lay ahead, but ready to fight. Their story wasn't over. It was just beginning. And before the dust settled across this chaos, one thing became clear. They were no longer just pawns in someone else's game. They were players, ready to reclaim their fates. But before they could catch their breath, the world around them began to dissolve into dark possibilities. Now you can't miss what's coming next. If you want to keep up with this roller coaster of emotions and secrets, you have to subscribe immediately. You don't want to lose track of the exclusive stories coming up. And while you're at it, smash that like button now. Your support drives this channel. We want to hear your reactions, theories, and thoughts. So flood the comment section with all your ideas. And don't wait even a second longer to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this wild ending. Your support makes all the